My name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here with Nick and Sheila Nicholas. It's Thursday, March 9th, 2022. Thank you both so much for joining us today. We really appreciate this. The first question to get us started is why wine?
Why wine? I guess it started when I was a youngster, and my dad, who was a Texan, decided to come west because of the Depression. And the first property he brought had grapes on it. And he said, "Son, we're going to take these out." I said, "Why, Dad?" He said, "These are table grapes,
Where was this?
and they have seeds."
Where were they? Where was this?
This was in Lodi in the Central Valley.
Sorry, I gotta prompt him here.
So he tore them all out and basically put some field crops and stuff like that. That's how I got introduced to grapes, basically, because I was a 12-year-old and I was hired to thin for a nickel an hour. But I got involved in this actual thinning, seeing grapevines, what you're trying to do, and just learning over time.
But I think about 100 years ago, we met in London, and I was doing PR at the time, and one of my clients was food and wine from France. And we got married in 81 in Boston, and then through a series of events, we ended up in Benicia, and then had the opportunity to start a pizza parlor in St. Helena in the Napa Valley. So I thought, well, I'll get back into PR because I enjoyed it, and eventually ended up with a marketing company with a PR agency that did a lot of wine PR. So from then, that was it. We got to know everybody. Our kids played with their kids. We traded wine for pizza. It was good. This cellar here is full of cult Cabernets that cost us a large pepperoni. So we ended up just really loving it and meeting rock stars in the Napa Valley, and then through my work beyond that in France and Italy and so on. And one day we thought, well, we could do this. How hard could it be? So we looked around the Napa Valley, and we couldn't afford whatever it was, 6 figures for an acre to buy Cabernet, and pizzas weren't that good. But we would. One of my clients at the time was up here in Oregon. I knew a couple of people up here, Susan Stokelblosser and Roland Souls. And I came up and it was like, oh, this is beautiful. This is it. The weather was gorgeous. We love the seasons. We love the colors, the rain. It's so green here. And the people were amazing. So we thought, well, let's do it. And we took the plunge 2000, right? Yeah, right on
9/11, we were in that little house.
And we lived in a little house on the property for a year while we built this. And we found this property, which was an overgrown walnut and plum orchard. It was about 70 acres. And we could afford it. So that pizzas did fit that bill. Anyway, so we did it the hard way. We never bought any fruit from anybody. We pulled out a lot of the orchard and planted a vineyard. So we put in like 35 acres the first year. It wasn't quite the smartest thing to do, really, because we just did it because we wanted to. And when we put in, it's easy to put it in, and then if you're not going to buy grapes from anybody, it's a long, slow burn until you get any return on those grapes. And do you remember it was 2003 was our first vintage, and we sat out there on the deck. We had our first bottle of wine from our vineyard, and we got a piece of paper out and we calculated how much that bottle cost. What was it, $537.12 or something for one bottle. So it's the most expensive bottle of wine we ever drank. But it was lovely, and so that's kind of how we ended up doing it. Really, just because we love the fresh air. We love seeing things grow. Of course, we love wine. You know, that's obviously the case. So the rest, as they say, is history.
And then we had somebody analyze the grounds, and he said, "You got a gold mine." So we were really fortunate there. But Sheila knew it because we were in the wine business, so you know the elevations and a little bit bigger up here because the air and heat works a little different than Napa Valley. You know, so you're going to plant Pinots rather than Cabs. But we planted 3 varietals the first time around.
Pinot, yeah.
And then added some more clones on the Pinots. We had 5 clones in Pinot. And so we said, I think that's enough. And then we started the changes recently. We said, well, we have more Wadensville than we really need. Let's put some Pomard in there. So we grafted over, and I'm glad we did. It turned out beautifully. But we planned that because we found grapes from other people that we knew and said we experimented. So we put it together and see what we got. And so what clones went with what clones. And so we get a really, really terrific blending wine. So that's what we did. It's just experimenting with, but like I say, Sheila knew people here that were pioneers as well, very well, and doing PR for them. So she got a lot of free advice.
Don't do it. Yeah, I got a lot of free advice. Too much. But no, I think that sort of talks to the industry, especially in those days. I remember it was raining at harvest, and I was like, oh my God. In Napa, they bring out the helicopters, you know. And I called up Roland Souls, and he goes, "Girl, don't be a wussy. Just gonna rain." And it rained, and it was fine. We survived. And, you know, that's kind of the way it was. So we learned, I think, someone gave us the best advice, which is learn the rhythm of the vineyard. And that's something that we've been able to do because we're in it every day, doing something. And so you observe it, and it becomes very much part of you. It's a bizarre feeling, but it's something I wasn't expecting, really. I mean, you weren't expecting that connection.
No.
So it's very powerful. That's why we're still here,
Yeah,
20-something years later. So learning the rhythm of the vineyard, you can also see what the vineyard needs, when it needs it. Oh, you know when the gophers are out, you know when the birds are coming, you know when the frost is coming, and when it
116 degrees.
When it's too hot. Yeah. Remember when we planted the young vines, we were dry farming up. You can't see, we're here, and it was baking hot 3 years ago, and they were like brand new babies. And I stretched every single hose I had from the faucet here and ran it all the way as far as I could, and then turned it on and blasted as far out as that's our irrigation.
Then I had my little scooter. I had a 15-gallon tank on the back with a water, and I said 1001, 1002. So I got to 1010. I gave them a gallon of water. Move on to the next one. I did that 3 times that year to save them, and we wouldn't let them die. Too much hard work. We're not going to let you die. So that was an experience that we didn't expect, but we had one last year too, and it took 116 degrees. We knew, we saw it coming. Like she says, you know the property, you know it's here. So we saw it coming. We left more leaves on so they wouldn't get burned. And so it turned out tremendous because the crop was fantastic. So we were very, very pleased. We made the right call. But that could say you have to feel the pulse.
So I have many questions about all of that, but I'm going to come back to it because I want to talk a little bit about before wine because you mentioned meeting and marrying and all of that. So Sheila, we'll start with you. Talk a little bit about your early life and early work and how you two met.
Sorry, we have different stories on how we met. That's why I'm just like laughing.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it was a long time ago. My bulletproof. My bulleted list is: I was born in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
My father was in the Foreign Office. He was a diplomat, and we moved around the world. So Iran, North Africa, West Africa, Seattle. Ended up in Scotland, where he was from Scotland. So we lived in Scotland. Gosh, I've forgotten all this. When I was very 22 or something, I wrote a book. It was a cookbook on Scottish cooking, but it was against the contract I had with the company I was working with as a journalist. So I took the money, went to Greece for a couple of weeks, and that was about all I had, and then came back and then had to find another job. Where am I going with this? And there were no jobs basically in Scotland, but I realised there was much more action in London than there was in Scotland at the time. I'm talking 50 years ago, and so got the overnight bus down to London, found a job in PR, lucked out there, and met Nick. I thought he was a dashing rich American. It was in the days when Dallas was on. You probably don't remember that. J.R. Ewing and all that stuff. And he said, I live in the Central Valley. I'm like, I live in a ranch-style home. It's like, whoa! My parents drive a Cadillac. I'm like, that's it. He was a good salesman. It turned out to be the duplex in Lodi, and the Cadillac was rented. But anyway, damage was done, and we got married in Massachusetts, halfway between his family in California and mine in Scotland. And that's it.
And what's your version of that, Nick?
Yeah.
Well, firstly, I came into London. I was working for Colgate in their medical division, so they promoted me up here to London, and I covered basically Europe before, but I covered the whole world with another company that they bought. So it was sort of a relief that I didn't have to fly for 3 weeks in 14 different cities, and it was tough, but it was a start, and I just got involved, and then they said, well, we need you back home. So they took me back home. But before that happened, a friend of ours decided to do a party. So we had to put together a lamb type of dish I made for like 10 people. And I was doing a flat basement and flat. And then I could see she and her girlfriend coming down the stairs. I just said, holy moly. But then, after dinner was done and I was cleaning the dishes, these guys just collapsed around these two girls. I said, wait a minute, guys.
Well, you should back up and say we were only invited because his friend's fiance knew us, myself and Josephine, and said, guy I know is having a party, doesn't know any girls. And we're like, done.
See, that's her influence.
And we didn't have to bring our own bottle either. It was amazing. It's like, it doesn't happen. Didn't happen to us anyway. So, and it was Nick's party. So there you go.
Yeah, that flat was something else. Well, the one I moved out, and she had to try to sell it in like 2 months. She had a tough time, but I understand, because we had like 16 offers on it. It's just like every time, well, no. So it was interesting.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And then I could say we got engaged over there, and they moved me back to Boston headquarters and got married in a church that had a soldier from the Civil War. Buried underneath the altar, that he was on a horse, and they would try to get away, and they shot him, and they didn't realize that he bucked, but he was buried under that church. And there was George and Martha had plaques on the seats, and the Grace Church is just
amazing,
a couple hundred years old at least, more than that. So it was interesting. The vicar came out with his white tennis shoes, and it was cool.
So how did you get from there to owning a pizza parlor in California?
Go for it.
I had a couple of buddies, they were schoolmates, were fraternity brothers. And one of them got into, his father owned a pizza parlor, and he found out this guy that's going bankrupt. And so he got into a pizza parlor and got to it for next to nothing. And then I was getting a little antsy of giving too much and getting too little.
Mm-hmm.
And the corporate end of it, it just gets to be very political. So it was time to go elsewhere. I looked at the financials, I said, might work. So by the time we finally sold the last one, we had 7 different ones, and we had a total 800 employees in 20 years.
It's amazing.
99 W-2s 1 year. So, like she said, pizzas, we'd have, winery would say, I need 40 today. Okay, I need 20 at this shift, I need 20 at this shift, I need 20 at this shift. I said, well, okay. Oh, that Chardonnay is really nice. Give me a couple cases of that Chardonnay. Give your reserve Pinots, but cabs and stuff. And so I just swapped. And I learned a lot from that too as well. So I got to try ones that I probably wouldn't try.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite interesting. But we went through Desert Storm. I had a couple places that were building their houses, and we had a pizza parlor there. That one hit us between the eyes, and so we had a couple of misses, but we had 2 of them that basically grossed as much as a McDonald's. So they were big grossing pizza parlors.
That's amazing.
And she was the trooper. She came to pick me up. We changed cars. We only had 1 car, and she was working the shift. She said, "Well, honey, I can't work the shift now." I said, "Why is that?" I said, "My water just busted." So she was due to work the shift that night as well. So it was tough. Kids laying on the counter changing diapers. Oh.
Hey, don't say that, dear. No, someone would come in for lunch, and the ladies from the city would come in like, "Here, babysit my infant." And, "Oh, lovely, thank you." But I used to deliver pizzas with the kids in the back seat because and I got to be old.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, but self-employed is what you do, and I think we've always been tough and resilient. We've, no matter what, we've figured it out, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, when we finally sold the last one, we had 3 employees that had been with us an average of 16 years.
It's amazing.
And we treated them well. They treated us well. That was it. That was a big key.
And we liked each other too.
Exactly.
We liked them. And actually here at our tasting room we have our staff has been with us. The most recent one is 4 years ago. So most of our staff's been there for 12, 15 years. And that's insane. We love them all, and they've all been out here. They all know the vineyard, and they've done stuff in the vineyard, and they know exactly what it's all about. So it's very powerful. And they're nice people. We really enjoy them. They're family, really.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
So it's good.
So you mentioned that your kind of love for wine sort of blossomed once you got to St. Helena and kind of were all of a sudden in Napa and around all these wines. So I'm curious about, as you got there, kind of your initial impressions of the wine industry in Napa at that point, and of the wines themselves. What was exciting to you about the wines and about the people involved in the industry?
In the Napa Valley?
The Napa Valley.
Ooh, well, I think it was really nice to see, because of who we were, what we were able to do, and how it was a community. So we would, our son's soccer coach was Bill Harlan, stuff like that. And it was not a big deal. And, we would trade pizza, a lot of trading wine as well. So, if so-and-so would come spend the night, here's a bottle of my wine, for babysitting or whatever. So it was just relaxed. And that, in those days, it was it was like the Falcon Crest was just starting, and that was kind of around the corner from us. So it's really the first time I really realised that it was that important a growing region because of the buses that would start coming and the tourists, which we never really, it was before the wine train even that we were there. I mean, we're talking 40 something years ago.
And the kids came to high school in their BMWs and stuff like that.
Yeah, that had to. That's one reason we came up here, actually, because it got to that stage where when Mark and Heather started getting into high school, basically it seemed to us that you either walked to school or you drove a BMW. And it was just like, and they all went to the A&W for lunch, which cost me like $12 a day or something. And it just wasn't normal. I don't know, it wasn't healthy. So anyway, when we came up here, Mark got his first job at his favorite restaurant, which was Taco Bell, because there's no Taco Bells in St. Helena. There weren't. And it just got bigger. It got bigger, and they got more and more money being dropped into it. More foreign investment, I suppose. I assume the wine quality went up. We weren't that knowledgeable about it, but I don't know what they're getting now. It's silly money. I shouldn't say that, but it's a very different ball game than we have up here.
Yeah, because a lot of foreigners came in and bought big properties and lost their buns, turned around and sell them for 50% less. So that hit its cycle, and all people said, "Whoa, I better stay out of that right now." But I think it has changed back to that over time. But it's also the fact that those people there are moving up here. Half the people are moving up here. And we know a number of those people very well. So it's interesting how that transitions now from 20 years ago to now. Because it's a lot more cutthroat than people imagine. That's, and unfortunately that's coming a bit up to here as well, but because we're bringing the influx of those people here, and they're always trying to stay away, This is a different country.
I think people come to Oregon for the love of making wine. It's not easy if you're into it. I see a lot of winemakers coming from California up here, and none going from here to California. I don't know what that means, other than I would assume that it's much more unpredictable up here. It's much more exciting. So we never know what the harvest is going to be. We never know what the vintage is going to be. We never know what's going to happen. Whereas in other parts of the world, it's much more predictable. You can plan your vacations around harvest. You can't do that here. And I think the camaraderie and the networking and the sharing of knowledge and equipment and staff and crews and all that stuff is much more up here than it is. I'm assuming it's been a long time since I've been there, and it's never on that end of things, but it seems to be very different down there now. And I think, hopefully we'll be able to keep that passion, which we, it's the thrill really of making wine that we have up here, as opposed to doing it as a business.
Like Sheila said, people are coming here for our consultant winemaker's been here about 15 years. He came from Michael Brown.
Costa Brown from
Costa Brown. He was the assistant when he won Wine of the Year. He's been with us for 15 years. He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And he does miracles. Well, not really. We got some great grapes, but he knows what he's doing. He knows what we want, But he also puts his own opinion into it as well. So he's a good friend. And we can't ask for more, really, when it comes to the consultant, because we basically do the tasting. There's a panel of 3. And it's got to be 3-0, or else guess what? It goes in the pot. We'll see you in 2 weeks, okay? Come back again. We'll try it again, all right? So we're very, very, very concerned about that, because we get a lot of 90 ratings. And, what do people say about 90 ratings? If there's anything too well, the same guy gives the same rating all the time, and he looks at the other guy, oh, you got a 92, well, I'll give him a 93. Anyway, you probably heard that as well.
So when you came up here, you had a bit of an idea. You mentioned you knew Susan, you knew Raul, you knew a few people up here. What was your kind of initial impression of Oregon at that time? Both Oregon, the place, but also Oregon's industry at that point and the people in it.
It was fantastic. It was wonderful. I mean, nobody used their car horns. I remember going to Fred Meyer, and the gal at checkout line in front of me was talking to the cashier, and they like, I don't have time, let's go. And suddenly I realized I had nowhere to go, Of course the cashiers asked me if I had a good day. Yeah, of course, Yeah, thank you. And so relaxing that way was very different from the pace of the stress, I suppose. Mm-hmm. The industry was so helpful. We would network, we would meet, we would talk about each other's wines, we'd call each other up and say, what are you doing about blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Oh, have you tried this, etc. So it was terrific to be able to do that. Or you'd say, hey, I remember you had this such and such piece of equipment. How's it work for you? And they go, thank you. Save me some money there. Or, if you want to borrow mine, do it. So, it was good. And there was no them and us. We were made very welcome by everybody, really.
Because a lot of them came here about maybe 5 to 10 years before us, because we're, I wouldn't say pioneers. We weren't there 50 years, about 5 of those basically. Mm-hmm. 2 of them were gone, but we're sort of that phase of coming in from other places, and just like those guys did too. Yeah. They came out from California, and I'm glad they did, because they helped establish a footprint here, and they were reliable. They were willing to share. They were willing to help you out if you came to a big problem. They'd be there, the first one to help you. Mm-hmm. So it's a family. It still is, but it's diluted a bit.
Mm-hmm. So what about Pinot Noir then? Obviously, you'd come from cab country, and you were used to big cabs. So tell me about discovering Pinot Noir, and what excited you about the prospect of growing it.
Well, I think I started off with White Zinfandel. my gateway wine.
You and everybody else.
Yeah, there you go. So White Zinfandel to cab, to go straight to the big stuff. And then, we just don't eat steaks every night anymore, do we? I mean, Zinfandel, glass every so often is fine. But I think as your palate changes, as you grow older, you want more of the finesse. You want something more interesting. You want something that's not going to just give you a headache, but something that really enhances the food. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of truth that we believe in the saying of what grows together goes together. So up here we have salmon, we have mushrooms, we have all kinds of beautiful produce and wild things and fish and so on. So, and that's what Pinot is all about. Mm-hmm. And you can get a Pinot to match with anything, anything. You can't get a Cabernet that matches with anything. That was kind of it. I think you grow into it. I think it's you kind of go from the whites into the big stuff, and then you settle on. It doesn't make any sense. This makes sense. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and no vintage is the same, and that's exciting for us. So, we learned how to speak like farmers. 11. That was the year without a summer. 10. That was the year of the birds. 9. That was da 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 da. So that's how it's pegged in our minds. So this is the 12. This is perfect. So that's kind of how we. Every vintage is different. It is for us. We're not making cookie cutter wines. So we let the vineyard lead the way, and that sounds very corny, but. So I tell the story about how we met Aaron. We used to
Met who?
Aaron. When we first started here, we put in our 30 acres or something. We went, oh, now what do we do? It's like, oh, we need someone who can help us. And we interviewed quite a few winemakers, and I'm sure you've interviewed them too. But several of them would say, "So, what kind of wine do you like? I'll make it just like that." And we went, well, first of all, we want to see what this vineyard does before we start pigeonholing it, or if we're going to. So we met Aaron Hess, who at the time was, I think it was still at Rex Hill.
Mm-hmm.
He was starting his own brand. And he said, good grief, what a beautiful property. I'd love to see what kind of wine it makes. And we went, done. So he was our winemaker for the first 2
years, I think.
2 or 3 years, then he passed.
Passed
It was
away.
terribly sad, but
Yeah.
but he taught us a lot. And so that's kind of how we went from there. We've always, whatever the vineyard wants us to do, we do it. So if it's a big year, we have 15% alcohols, and that's the way it is.
So be it. Pay the taxes.
And we don't capitalize, we don't spin it, we don't dilute it. That's the way it is.
Yeah,
So I think,
he knows that,
yeah.
but he's on our side anyway, so it makes it easy.
Who, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So you mentioned before we started the interview, you talked a little bit about the kind of development of the property and of the vineyard. I'm curious, as you were taking over something that was overgrown and kind of unruly and turning it into this, what were the kind of unexpected challenges along the way? What happened? What did you have to do or have to learn that you weren't necessarily expecting as you set out to plant a vineyard here?
We learned, we didn't just kind of do it. We did actually get due diligence with soil tests and that kind of thing. And we did get a vineyard manager who helped us lay it out and suggested a lot of stuff. That was Buddy Beck. And that was fantastic. But I think in terms of what did we do? We had no idea how physical it was. It's not easy to prune. Let me tell you, it's like exhausting. Even raising the wires is exhausting. And there's only so much you can ask your children to help you do. So that was to me the most surprising thing. We both lost a lot of weight, buffed up, and
We learned a lot because the tractor had to be our friend because you can only do so much and be effective. So we had to learn to take care of that, And again, we had great help from Buddy, and now we have Chad Vargas, Adelshine, because we sold a lot to Adelshine. Chad's great too, so we're pleased. But we choose people that are on the same level that we are thinking what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. I'm not going to go off in that tangent or that tangent, or I'm going to go down the middle of the road. I'm going to venture little ways each way as time goes and as the crop comes in. Because we follow the crop quite vividly to find out what's going to come from that sun, what's going to come from that heat. Do we need to pull leaves? Do we need to expose? We're going to get any bites from the birds? Don't know. There's something there. The bird can really wipe you out. Last few years, really well. They've done extremely well. But we've had some guys like Cellars lost a big part of their vineyard years ago.
anyway.
They're our neighbors now, too.
Yeah,
So.
they are. We actually, one thing that is probably completely not really relevant, but one thing that surprised both of us is the amount of paperwork and taxes we have to pay. And nothing's done on a handshake anymore. It's brutal. Brutal out there. The paperwork is just, you can bury you alive. And there's so many organizations, and they call it a luxury tax. It's like, what? Stuff like that. It's like, how's this a luxury? Look, do I look like I'm living in luxury? So that's pretty heavy. And then travel and selling as well. It is Actually, that's got easier, really, I think.
Distributors are difficult though.
Distributors are tough when you're small.
And they want everything, and they they want you to sell it and everything, and then they take the profit. They say, wait, something wrong with this theory here.
And then they don't pay you.
Yeah.
or your wine's in New York and there's no money. So, there's stuff like that. That's the headaches of being self-employed anyway, really, I suppose. But I think it's the taxes and all of the agencies. There's one every day that crops up. There's another one that just came up in Oregon. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, so yeah.
So when it came time and you finally had, you mentioned the most expensive bottle of wine you ever had, the first bottle. When you finally had wine in the bottle, tell me about creating. What point did you create the name? Did you create kind of what you wanted the brand to be and what you wanted the brand to kind of stand for?
Well, it's just sort of evolved, really. So, we're the marketing committee, so we're breakfast, So we had the concept, we basically called the wine Anam Cara, and in Celtic it means friend of my soul or soulmate. And the way we came up with that name, we had some friends over, we had a dinner party right here. And everybody had to bring, it was to name the wine, basically. Everyone had to bring a bottle that they liked the label, so we could do our label research that way. There were 8 of us, so we thought 4 couples, with 8 bottles of wine because no one could agree on anything. And one of our friends was reading this book called Anam Cara, the Book of Celtic Wisdom. So we got a hold of the book, and she was saying, it's all about friendship and connections, and it really made a lot of sense to all of us at the dinner, frankly, and the fact that people have been making wine for thousands of years, and God willing, they still will be when we're done. And so there's that connection. There's a connection with the land, the connection with ourselves that made the wine, and people all over the world drink it, which is very cool. Get pictures, especially the United States, pictures from all corners of the country with people with our bottle of wine, and it's so nice. It would never happen if we were selling widgets or something, or maybe it would, but so that's why we call it Anam Cara, and because it's all from here, and we planted it. We live here, we drink the same water as the vines, and so that's how it became Anam Cara. And then with our first bottle of wine, we showed it to, you talked to Boyd Teagarden? We talked to Boyd, I said, look Boyd, I have my first bottle, and he goes, where's your name? It's like, well, it's in the back or something. People want to know this, so now it says Nicholas Estate Vineyard on it, or
Sheila Mountain.
It has our name on it. Nicholas Vineyard. So now we live on Nicholas View Drive, Nicholas Estate Vineyard.
Nicholas nickname.
His real name is Warren, by the way.
That's a picture of the vineyard from that hill over here.
Yeah, that's taken from the other side.
It's
amazing.
A friend of ours is a children's book illustrator. And that's the original label. And then the knot of...
the Celtic knot symbolizes infinity. And then, of course, you have the connection of the vines. There's a time in June when those vines actually go crazy. They start growing a lot, and they actually will connect if you don't keep on top of them. So there's that connection. So
a lot of weddings for this wine. People, we probably had a dozen boats christened from Massachusetts to Seattle to Miami. It's great. The guys with the caps on, Anam Cara caps. We have one here. A hell of a sailor. He's got a big boat. The crew is 8, I think, and he's won a lot of them. He's got his Anam Cara. All the crew's got the Anam Cara shirts on. It's cool.
So we sort of stumbled into that thinking that was a great name, and then found out that actually this book is global. We didn't realize it was quite that important or impactful. But yeah, so it has a lot of. So that's how we ended up with the name Anam Cara, from a little dinner party we had.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when it came time, you mentioned selling your wine. You mentioned it difficult. So I'm curious. Tell me about that. You finally have this wine that you've worked so hard for. It has your name on it. Has all this stuff on it. How do you get it in people's hands? How do you get people excited about it? What were some of the strategies you used, and how did you build sort of a following to get your wine out into all corners?
Our first wine was in 2003, and it was terrible, absolutely terrible stuff. And we had 100 cases. We're like, what are we gonna do with this? I don't know. I don't want to drink it. And remember, we came up with this idea that, well, it's really, because the fermentation got away from us, it was just awful. So it was like cooked. So we thought, I know, let's just tell people if they like Syrah, they'll like this wine. So we did. And they go, I don't drink Pinot Noir. I said, do you like Syrah? They go, I love Syrah. I go,
Nice.
try this.
That's big. That's
the
nice.
best Pinot I ever had. It's like, good. So we sold it one bottle at a time that way. But after that, we kind of honed it down. We used to do tastings before we had a tasting, and we just do tastings around our dining room table right in here. Mm-hmm. And we came up with the idea of just having 100 club members, and we'd all know their names, and everything would be cool. And so we were up to about 80, because everyone who came thought it was lovely. And we opened up the tasting room. And suddenly everybody wanted to join the wine club because they tasted the wine. And they were like, well, I'm sorry, we have 100 members. You can't. So, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. So we ended up, the first 100 are now founders. Mm-hmm. And we have founders that have been with us for 18, right from the beginning. So they all have their numbers now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when they get together, they're like, ooh, I'm number 87. Last year I was 88. I moved up. So that was kind of it. You know, we do something special for them. We love our wine club, and that's mainly the tasting room and our wine club. Mm-hmm. We have had distributors here and there over the 20 years. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're getting back up to possibly having a few more. But we're so boutique that, I don't like that word, but we're so small.
Intimate.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not of interest really to many big ones, so we get lost in a big portfolio.
We have a big distributor. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Back east, who does a lot for us, but he's big. Mm-hmm. You probably heard of Total Wine. Mm-hmm. We've been there 15 years. Mm-hmm. So.
But only with like 2 wines. It's not like all of them.
No.
But it's really our wine club, wouldn't you say?
Sorry.
It's really our wine club.
Oh, that helps. It helps a lot, really.
And they're terrific too.
Yeah, we have a good time because we have a Starlight dinner every year here. There's about 125 people. And last year we had the chef who's the head chef of the Seattle Culinary Association. Mm-hmm. So he came over here with his what kind of steak was that?
It's not
hanger steak.
Hanger
steak for 125 people, cooked to order.
Yeah.
And we do it all the time. We've had stuffed pigs buried in the back in the vineyard, mm-hmm. And we've had Pinot. What's the big thing? Paella. We had 2 things of paella this big.
Well, this is our big wine club event of the year is a star party with OMSI. Mm. So one of our wonderful staff members, Kate, works at OMSI, and so we were the first vineyard to have one of their star parties.
That's awesome.
So we support them with product, with wine, and then they provide this incredible star party for our club members.
Plus the head of
and Jim Todd comes out.
He's the head astrologer, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a great guy because we've been doing it for at least 10 years now. Mm-hmm. And the sale is gone. I mean, the club members just gobble them up, you know. We don't care how much it is. We know it's going to be great. And then a star party. Sometimes it gets smoked out. Sometimes, you know, the clouds.
No, it's never happened.
Pretty lucky.
Very lucky, yeah. But we're never going to be huge, you know. He's the tractor driver and CFO. And I'm the... What do I do?
And the brains behind it all.
Did you get that? Did you get that okay?
just slipped. Sorry.
So we do it all. You know, we do the plumbing and we make the wine, and we do the tasting and the dinners, which is the fun part.
And she's very involved. I mean, she was been the PR chair for the IPNC
We have them.
for 6 years. Supposed to be 2 years, and they kept saying, "No, you can stay, you can stay, you can stay." But you get so big, and you've got so many things yourself, and it's difficult. She finds a way to do it. And I can chase the dogs out through the vineyards and stuff, and shoot gophers.
So we're it. So I think we're limited by the size of the vineyard, and we're also limited by
Age.
the fact. Yeah, that too. But we're also limited by, you know, we don't have fancy staff or anything. We have low overheads, no overheads basically. So that's why we can just do what we like doing.
We make a good profit, excellent profit. So it takes work. It just doesn't fall on your lap, you know. You got to get it, you know. But we enjoy that because we enjoy the pleasure after we've accomplished something and people have accepted it, and we say, do it again.
Yeah, it's a nice feeling.
You talked earlier about knowing the vineyard. I thought that was really, the way you described it was really interesting. It's kind of becoming part of you and feeling. How long did that take? How long did you have to be here to have the vineyard kind of become that part of your life?
Mine was really quick because I was on the tractor and I was seeing it evolving all the time, you know. So the bud break, you know, and then we got the flowering, you know, and then we got the birds, and then we got other insects, and we don't use chemicals. So we say, well, how effective is this, you know? And you just get involved because you see it every day, and it changes every day. And it's an enjoyment. I can say I really enjoy being out there because, you know, playing with 15 employees, you know, it's old after a while. I can yell at the mines and they don't yell back.
What about for you, Sheila?
I don't know. Pretty much from the beginning. I think when it just sticks in the ground, it's a bit boring. But once they actually have buds and you see the little tiny grapes, it's like, oh, you know, this is important because this grape is going to make something that will be around for, I don't know, ever sometimes. And that's pretty, it's a big responsibility. And the vines are very, they're very resilient, they're very tough. They kind of, well, I don't, you know, it sounds silly, but you know, you can walk through the vines and talk to them, you can sing to them, and then every so often you see one that's sort of collapsed off the trellis, and you put it back up and clip it up, and it'll go like, oh, thank you. Yep, you're welcome. That's good. So, yeah, you know, from the beginning, basically, once they're on the trellis, I think, it's probably when they actually sort of become personal.
So I'm curious. I want to talk about the industry a bit more from a kind of a broader perspective now. You obviously, we talked earlier, you had a bit of an idea of what was going on up here as you got here, but I'm curious what the changes you've seen. What about Oregon wine has changed in the years you've been here, and what does it look like now to you, looking back 20 years back? What does the industry look like to you today?
It's a lot more organized than it was. The wine board is extremely strong. It's been fantastic to see that in operation, if you will. I was going to say a machine, but it's not really a machine. I guess it is. But, you know, especially with the challenging years, they really step up. The same with the Willamette Valley Wineries Association. It's another level. In the old days, it was just kind of like birthday party type thing. I'm not saying that right, but basically now it's much more structured. You know, there's research, there's support, there's I mean, you know, just go to the symposium, etc. It's just big, and it's fantastic. So, but it's a bit more of a machine than it ever was before, which has really stood us in good shape in the last, you know, some of the challenging vintages, because they're there for us, which probably wasn't okay. See, that's Missy. So I remember when we first came up, though, it's been really fun to see, like, Chardonnay take off. We, at one point when I was doing PR, I was fortunate to be invited to help the Oregon Chardonnay producers, all 7 of them, do some PR. And I remember meeting in the back room of the Dundee Bistro with the 7 were Harry Peterson Nedry, Dave Adelsheim, Louisa Ponzi, Eric Hamaker, Tony Reinders. Oh dear. I'll think of them in a sec.
Who'd you miss?
Oh, what?
Who'd you miss? I can't think of who'd you miss there.
I'll think of it. Brain remember anything. But we used to have fantastic meals with Chardonnay, and we called ourselves Orca. I remember that naming party quite succinctly. Does he Tony Reinders? He was Domaine Serene at the time. Oh, and Veronique.
Veronique.
And so that was we called ourselves Orca, the Oregon Chardonnay
Alliance.
OR, sorry. And got some really good press, because we sent out these packages with the history of the Dijon clones, and of course having such great spokespersons, it was a PR person's dream. So much so I came back and said, honey, we need to plant some Chardonnay.
We had black Chardonnay.
So we have some Chardonnay now.
Yep.
So
everybody wants to buy it. I said, well, we gotta have some too, you know.
So it was a great story for journalists, and that was huge, and it was fantastic to get all that press. And it's become bigger and bigger and bigger, because people are just, I mean, look at it now. You know, it has its own symposium. It's phenomenal, and it started off with those pioneers, and it was very exciting to be part of that group. And say we would just hang out and brainstorm, and you know, it was great. So, what was your question?
just the changes you've seen in the industry.
Yeah, that's one. I think it's also impressive to see how Riesling is taking off up here. That's always been a hard nut to crack, because people always assume, as you know, it's sweet and boring, and Grandma drank that. But we used to have basically Oregon Riesling Alliance. A lot of the same folks. We would meet at Penarash, various places, but most recently at Penarash. It's been years since we did this. And it was open to everybody. If you made Riesling, you were invited. You brought a bottle of your own Riesling, about a tank sample that was about to be bottled. And we would analyze it, we would brown bag it, and we would do flights and all that stuff. And you know, when the bags came off, they would go like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. And then literally people, it was no journalists, no public, just us. And it would be, well, have you tried this? I did this, I did that. And it's I think, one of the ways it has raised the perception of Riesling. And it's really fun to see the younger generation of winemakers making Riesling. The Soms are into Riesling. It's just got to get the public into it. But it's happening.
And we had to plant that one too.
We had to plant that one too, yes. No, we had that. We planted some
we
right
had
here.
Gewürztraminer down there.
Yeah,
That's right.
we had Riesling.
You had a little bit of Riesling, yeah.
So, so that's been fun to see that happen. And I think it's really exciting to see the recognition of Riesling on the world stage. There's an article today, I haven't even read it, but basically the market share of Oregon Riesling, or Oregon Pinot, Oregon wine, driven by Pinot, has risen by 5% or something which is still this much. But California has only risen by like 1%. Don't quote me on those numbers. 1% of that much is a lot more than 5% of this much. But if you take it, we've never compromised on our pricing. We've basically haven't been able to because it's not a cheap grape to make. So and I think the world perception, the sort of ripple effect of that has been that people are just like, no, Oregon make good stuff there, and they do it, they live it, and they are heavily involved in it, and I think that's made a huge difference.
It's interesting.
Finally recognizing it.
What I think is the response we get from San Francisco Chronicle wine judging. We have been a gold for 7 years.
Yeah, we do.
It's just automatic, but I mean, there's different people. And we just had another one, East versus West, that we came in with some that. So, we got people want to buy it. I said, hey, fine, but I can't sell it because I need it. It's a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
But I don't like back orders, and we have a little of that right now that we're finally getting over. But it's nice to have for a while until you fill the orders, and then thank you. But then find more. We got more land to knock out, and the next door neighbor, that's 5th generation, so I don't think he's going to get any help. That's the Shaws. That were going to be Shaw Mountain rather than Parrot Mountain.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
I'm curious with your background in PR especially, what you've seen. You mentioned kind of the growth of like the Oregon Wine Board and the Napa Valley Wine Growers Association. Have you noticed the industry doing a better job of marketing itself, of getting itself out there since you've been here? Has that improved?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. I mean, of course, the last 2 years have been another, blip. Yeah. But I think, I mean, Oregon Pinot Camp it's a golden ticket to get invited to that. And that is, and those guys become ambassadors for you. And that was a brilliant move. IPNC, there's nothing like it. And again, those people leave from Oregon in love with the wines, the people, and it's just natural. We're not faking it. So yeah, there's that. And then of course, the whole marketing side of things with the big guys are being very supportive of the little guys, because we can't afford to do, a trip to New York anymore. I don't think we ever could. But we can if we're part of the Willamette Valley wineries that are doing like a road show. I can't remember what they call it, Pinot in the City. Then we can go, and then we get the power of their PR and marketing and so on. So that helps us a lot. It helps a lot of small people. So yeah, that's been really helpful to us. Lots more marketing opportunities, much more creative marketing opportunities than we ever had. So it's great to have that support. So we couldn't do it on our own.
What about what comes next for Oregon's wine industry? Obviously, you mentioned the blip of the last couple of years. Obviously, it's been tough on everyone, the pandemic and a rough vintage in 2020. What do you see as you look ahead? What are you hoping for the Oregon wine industry looks like? Is there anything that you're fearful of as you look ahead?
Well, I think one thing in our favor, probably just talking off the top of my head, but basically one thing I believe is that we are still not really viable for as many large corporations as there are in other wine growing areas, because we have a climate that changes every year. It's hard to make consistently exactly the same wines. Can be done, but it's expensive for them to do that. But the land up here is still comparatively cheap. Although that's getting more expensive, but it's getting more and more bought out. And also, I think that we're on slopes. The premium vineyards are on slopes. So if you want a good vineyard, you can't afford a machine to harvest it for you. You need that money. You need to get the crew. In other words, you can't compromise the price. You can't really produce a $12 bottle of Pinot Noir. You can probably produce a $12 bottle of Cab, simplistically speaking, because there's still too many overheads. So I don't think we'll ever be. There are some big guys in here now. Obviously, they're not necessarily in the hills. And they're not necessarily in the little microclimates that make us all little people unique.
Big.
But they're coming.
They are. But there's less land and less land and less land. So, their qualities are going to go away and away and away.
Or they're farming on the valley floors so they can put the Oregon label on it. And that's been ugly. So, seeing what some have done to other Oregon producers has been pretty ugly. But as an industry, we support each other. And it's not that we're really, I should say that the larger producers that have, the more conglomerate producers that have come up here and invested in Oregon wines, there's definitely the ones that support us and the ones that don't. And you can tell the ones that don't are just like, they're out there and it's like, fine, whatever. But the ones that really care about us, I'm thinking, Kendall Jackson's been fantastic. Fully Kenzie, Penarash, they've been doing a great job with that. They've supported the individual brands and kind of made them separate. And, if you didn't know, you would know, which is fine. But they also get us out into the world. They have the ability to ship our wine internationally. And they're shipping a quality product. So that's good. But I think we'll still always be known for our smallness in terms of size of production. I don't know what the average size of production is. What is it?
It's very small.
Is it 10,000 cases or something?
No,
Less than that.
Is it really?
Yeah.
The last stat I heard was that 80% of Oregon producers make 5,000 cases or less.
Ah,
So
good.
it's like 3,000, I guess, or something. It's
That's right.
It's small.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we don't, we drop a lot of Pinot. We drop sometimes half our crop. But we know what's happening on the way, so we watch it, and so we can better gauge how much, when, et cetera, et cetera. So, and sometimes you'll get a super, like this 2021 is fantastic. I mean, that's a great one. It's a great wine. It's turning out to be a great wine. But it had high yields, but we get shave it a bit, which is fine. We usually do that anyway, but it's about changes every year, and it depends on the clone too. The clone will change between on the growing periods, which is interesting because we've got 4 different clones of Pinot Noir, and make 4 different types of Pinot Noir. So we can use those different clones.
That's a lot of different clones behaving differently. That's a lot to learn and keep track of. That's an interesting process.
And it changes when you blend each one. The same next year, blend the same ones, you got different wines. So it's a challenge. It's an interesting challenge. Then you say, why does it do that? So you try to rack your head. Well, I've got to learn, because if it happens again, I've got to have the answer. And that's why when you're small, you can do that. You can your lab's out in the field. That's the thing you learn. You're out there picking the bunches and checking if there's any disease or whatever.
So I think that's what we'll be known for probably forever, hopefully, is our small uniqueness.
Yeah, when you go from 70 down to 7, it's quite a reduction.
Yeah.
But we sold it to somebody that has been here for a long time.
We do our vineyard.
Yeah, you probably know who it was, right?
Yeah.
The Austins. He bought 60 acres there. He knew the vineyard.
From Rain Dance. That was, yeah.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
Rain Dance and the Austin, the what's the name of the spa?
Ellison.
In Ellison, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we wanted to find somebody that was willing to do that because we're still here, and so
Good to know.
their vineyard manager was ours the same. So we, it was a transition that we wanted to make, and they didn't have any problems with it at all. They just said absolutely how much. So there was no bargaining. There was just an understanding that you're going to get a great vineyard. And they knew they were going to get a great vineyard. So it was good. I mean, we could have found somebody else, and you don't know. It's all past history that it happened. But I think it was a good transition.
So what's next for you two then? Down to just 7 acres now, and what's next?
Well, I don't know. The kids don't want it.
We're going to vacation a little bit.
Yeah, we're trying. We keep saying, "Oh, let's retire," and then we harvest more grapes.
Or find a property.
And then you harvest more grapes. That means you're in for 3 more years. So.
Then we found a place that had shellfish, so we bought
we
a
did
place.
oysters for a bit, didn't we?
We had oysters and clams for 5 years, and a B&B or what they call it, Airbnb. It was great. It was a Puget Sound. Watching it, beautiful. And so now we're looking at another one in Newport. So I'm gonna have a place to go sometime, and it's I'm pushing 82, so it's time. The old bones don't go as far as they used to go. They hurt though, even more.
But it's hard to get off it's hard to do. We just love it here.
Yeah.
I think whenever we travel, we go like, okay, there's no vineyards here. I need to go home.
Because my family is from Bordeaux, actually. Nicolas used to be without the H. And
It's in the blood. It's got to be around a vineyard.
Yeah.
yeah, beautiful. It's a beautiful area.
So I don't know what's next. We'll just keep going. Still sit on our deck. Still watch the grapes grow.
In winter here, we got to go find summer. So we'll do that first. Who knows?
All right. Well, that's all the questions that I have for the two of you. Anything that I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover that we should have covered?
Not really.
All right.
Hopefully you got good information.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for your time and your hospitality. Thank you too, Missy. I appreciate the snuggles while I was asking questions. And we'll go ahead and let you off the hook. Thank you so much.